24 years. It's been a whole 24 years since a little game that could came out, known as Jet Set Radio, on the Sega Dreamcast.
I played it as a teenager, and if that doesn't date me, nothing will. And I was there to watch it make a permanent impact on the world of gaming. Every now and again, a game comes out that's so different it defies expectations and becomes a kind of cultural landmark. Your parappa the rappers.
M-I-X, crack, crack. All we gotta do is crack. All we gotta do is crack. Mexican, 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 Chinese, 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 Mexican, Mexican,
Your Metal Gear Solids.
So that's why they call him Vamp. No, Vamp isn't for vampire. It's because he's bisexual.
Your Katamari Damashis. Your Jet Set Radios. Now, I'm not always going to be kind when I talk about this series. 24 years of media evolution have reframed my perceptions of it. Yet, I'll never be as vicious as I could be. I can never excise that nostalgia from my mind. Hell, maybe it can't be excised from the video game landscape. There's never been a decent follow-up to Jet Set Radio or its sequel, Jet Set Radio Future. That is, until last year, with the impressive Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. You can tell it's a spiritual successor by the three wacky words strung together in the title. I mean, it could have just as easily been called Turbo Thrust Techno Glide, and it really wouldn't have been worse for it. Now, if you want the condensed TLDR of it, I think Bomb Rush puts Jet Set to shame in most arenas. But I also think that's the lowest bar to be expected, not only because I ran the calculations and these games are over 20 years old, but also because if you come at the king, you best not miss. One of the things that blows me away is that if LinkedIn is to be believed, Bomb Rush's Team Reptile is a team of 2 to 10 people. That's less than half of the scrappy 25-person team working at Sega on the original Jet Set Radio, which tells me two things. One is that we've come a long way in game development, and two, that this is a labor of love, and God does that ever show. But I'd be remiss if I told you Bomb Rush is better than Jet Set Radio and I gave you no other context. And so with that, let's go to Tokyo Toe in the far-off year 2000.
In the year 2000. Rock that shit, homie.
So imagine it's the year 2000. You're into extreme sports and hate school and the man, and skateboarding isn't a crime, and graffiti is just like street art, bro. Well, then this is probably the game for you. Jet Set Radio. I always knew it as Jet Grind Radio, and I thought it was just a stupid localization change, but it turns out they changed the name because there was a copyright issue with the phrase Jet Set in the US. And at its core, it's a game where you inline skate around places inspired by real-life areas of Tokyo, and New York in the international versions, and tag up spots with graffiti, all while avoiding cops and competing with your rivals. A good old-fashioned game about gang warfare and vandalism. Now, two words come to mind when I think of JSR, and that's style and tedium. On the style front, the game still manages to be impressive, over 20 years later, though of course, I am biased. The game employs cel-shaded 3D graphics, which make it look similar to a cartoon. It pioneered this style even. Games like Mega Man Legends or Fear Effect had a similar style, but those were just cartoony textures, where in JSR, this effect is rendered in real time. And every time I've seen anything remotely similar to cel shading since, I think of Jet Set Radio. Wind Waker? Just like Jet Set Radio. 13? Like Jet Set Radio. Sly Cooper? Like Jet Set Radio.
I got voices in my head telling me to blow things up too.
Like how there's this really cool movie called The Scanner Darkly, based on a Philip K. Dick novel about a man who's both a drug dealer and an undercover agent who's unknowingly investigating himself because he's losing his grip on reality because of how much of this drug he's done, and the drug is called death, and it's got the psychedelic animation style because he uses a process called rotoscoping that looks like cel shading. It's pretty much Jet Set Radio. The game has an eclectic mix of cool and interesting characters with distinct styles, but there's little voice acting to speak of outside of the noises they make.
Yeah.
That is, of course, except for our main man.
Hey out there, this is Tokyo's very own #1 pirate power station, Jet Set Radio! Over the hood, through the streets, and right into your brain. We're transmitting our signal straight to you. Y'all got your antennas on or what? Yeah, we're riding high in a smooth stream of supersonic sound. And I'm your captain and DJ, Professor K! Jet Set Radio!
Billy Brown's DJ Professor K is nothing but delightful. It's kind of over the top and a little campy, but I think that's what they were going for, and there's still something just so cool about him. As you can see, he is the DJ of the eponymous Jet Set Radio. He's mostly used as a narrative device to transition between levels and provide what little narrative Jet Set Radio has. The game also has its antagonists, rival gangs, or Rudies as they're called, the Love Shockers competing for your home turf of Shibuya-cho, the Noise Tanks from Benton-cho, and Poison Jam from Kagane-cho. Then there's Police Captain Onishima, an unhinged cop who becomes more and more so as he ultimately sends helicopters and tanks after, let me check my notes here, rollerbladers. Then there's Goji Rokaku and the Rokaku Group, a Yakuza-type corporate organized crime syndicate. Artist Ryuta Ueda, responsible for the art and character design, outdid himself. The coolness of his characters will outlive him and all of us. The game carries this colorful and intriguing design into every other realm. It contains some beautiful graffiti which you can collect and customize throughout the game. It always feels satisfying to throw up your territorial pissings when you do. Some of this graffiti is even contributed by New York artist and designer Eric Hayes. The assets, the fonts, the interface, hell, even the menus, they all look cool. Though some of these funky and sharp fonts do look a little dated now, I can assure you there was a time where they were more novel. The level design is unique and well planned. Every area looks distinct and there's a ridiculous amount of detail put into all of the levels. I couldn't help but think when playing through all of these games, how much time and attention must have went into making these places feel lived in. And all of the levels have their own personal flair, despite being decidedly urban. Shibuya has a bus terminal and a playground. Kugane has this suburban sprawl, a sewer, and an abandoned lot. Grind Square just sucks. You know, that kind of thing. And well, I think that covers everything under the style section. Oh wait, I forgot. The music.
He's a sweet soul brother. Sweet, sweet soul brother. He's a sweet soul brother. Sweet, sweet soul.
Jet Set Radio has, without a doubt, one of the best video game soundtracks ever created. I'd like to stop and pay homage to the CEO of Funky Fresh Beats, Twitter shitposter, and sweet soul brother himself, Hideki Naganuma. No, really. This guy's Twitter is wild and you have to follow him. Every single song in this soundtrack is good. If you don't count all the international version Rob Zombie and Jurassic 5 shit. In a sea of timeless music, it's an island of Y2K.
Hey!
I would even recommend you rush out and get the official JSR soundtrack by whatever means available to you. But you'd be cheating yourself on the experience, because several of the songs only appear in-game, due to licensing reasons. The Guitar Vader stuff, Magical Girl, and Super Brothers particularly, are some of the better tracks. I could go on about the music for this entire review, and it deserves it. Hideki Naganuma is the funkiest man in Japan, and somehow, they got him for Jet Set Radio, and we're all better for it. So that's my quick rundown of the style portion of JSR. Saying it's stylistic, or cool, or inspired, loses something. Picture is worth 1,000 words. There's thousands of pictures, models, and notes of songs weaved together in a tapestry to form the cosmetic identity of Jet Set Radio. So in truth, it defies words. JSR is one of those rare things that happens when all of the right pieces come together. Directed by Masayoshi Kikuchi, who directed the Panzer Dragoon series, art by Ryuta Ueda, and music by Hideki Naganuma. It's a game where you skate and do graffiti while avoiding cops to an amazing playlist. It's rebellious, if of its time, but it could only have been made the way it was right at that moment. But, in a way, all of these style elements overshadow what Jet Set Radio is, or what it could be. I don't want to say that Jet Set Radio is style over substance, but oops, I already said it, it's already out there. For instance, ponder Jet Set Radio's storyline, or lack thereof. They say so little in the flashiest way possible. The storyline in the first half of the game is, we have beef with rival gangs and cops don't like us, but it's told by super cool black DJ man and narrated over comic strips. It also has an ending akin to, it was all a dream. I'd call that a spoiler, but this game has a storyline with the depth of a reflecting pool, so what am I spoiling? I mean, Jet Set Radio is so fucking cool, it almost doesn't matter what it plays like, and if anything was neglected, it was that. I've taken special care not to talk about Jet Set's gameplay until the very last moment, because it's the only place it's lacking. Sure, it's a flaw in a diamond, but it's a flaw nonetheless. So if you'll humor me, let me break down really quick how the game plays, and how it doesn't. The game opens with a character called Beat joining the GGs in one of these Simon Says move battles. You know, they do a move, you do a move, that kind of thing. It works as a kind of de facto tutorial. First you do this with Gum. Now, right here is where I find our first problem. you constantly need to be hitting the right trigger of the Dreamcast controller to do this dash. It gets real old, and I got a kind of PTSD out of it. I ended up doing it by force of habit in Jet Set Radio Future, and even sometimes a whole game later when I was playing Bomb Rush, just out of force of habit. And this matters more in this game than any of the other ones, because if you hit a rail going slow, you go so fucking slow. I mean, nothing would suffer if they just sped you up when you hit a damn rail. Next, I have you lay down some graffiti. The graffiti system consists of a set of prompts with an up or down or clockwise or counterclockwise arrow. Smaller graffiti is sprayed down instantly, but larger graffiti takes more of these inputs to spray. You have to rotate or move your control stick in the direction of the arrows. You get extra points for doing it at about the same speed as the prompts. Next, there's this part with Tab where they make you go up somewhere to get some cans, required to spray some graffiti. I think the point is to show you that you can grab cars to get places, which is cool, but this one section is one of the few places that even has cars. You can go the whole game without using this technique. After this, you go to the garage. The garage is the menu and level select. Here you can choose graffiti, listen to music, change your settings, change your character. Characters have different stat levels. They have power, which is how much health or stamina they have. They have technique, which shows how well they can do tricks. And then they have a graffiti level, which correlates to how complicated their graffiti prompts are and also inversely affects how many spray cans they can hold. On the tricks and technique system, it exists, but it's largely just points for jumping from rail to rail or the occasional half pipe with a combo for not touching the floor because it's lava apparently. And it isn't really used for anything meaningful other than scoring points in some of the optional levels. It feels like something that had to be added just because you're skating around the city, but it isn't deep or well thought out. The more complicated graffiti prompts earn you more points. By the way, spray cans are another thing that break up the action of the game. You need them to spray graffiti, and some levels are engineered to put respawning cans at one end of the level and the graffiti spots way on the other side. You tend to run out quickly, so you'll be making a mad dash back and forth between the level the whole time. Now, I said there is some tedium when it comes to Jet Set Radio, and one of the most tedious things is the cops. Cops really slow down the gameplay. This is a game where you want to skate around and do graffiti, and sometimes it's so up your butt about not wanting you to skate around and do graffiti. Now, I get it. The game has to have some source of challenge. You can't just eat candy all day. A game about doing graffiti wouldn't be fun if it didn't feel like you were breaking the law and being chased every step of the way. But the cops at Jet Set Radio just aren't executed gracefully. What tends to happen is, as you're spraying, cops or Rokkaku group will rush up behind and attack you. You can break out of your tag and run away, but canceling the animation takes time. It rarely feels quick enough, and you end up taking some damage. As the level goes on, it will become more dense with cops or enemies, and they'll camp the areas you want to spray. Your first instinct in the levels will be to spray the low-hanging fruit small tags, because you can get them instantly, but the game will punish you for that. You'll leave the biggest tags for last, which leave you the most exposed and with the most cops around to get you. This forces you to strategize, which isn't generally a bad thing. You'll want to get the big tags first and the small tags last, but the only way to know where the big and small tag spots are is through experiencing the level, which means on the harder levels you're going to find yourself playing them at least twice. Oftentimes you'll be right on the cusp of beating them the first time around, which can be very frustrating. You'll either run out of health or run out of time. And while I'm on this point, can I talk about the goddamn map? The map itself is functional. It does a decent job of showing where you are, though it's a 2D map of a 3D area and some tags are high up. It's a minor thing, and it's worse in Grind Square than anywhere else. But the other annoying thing is that short of cruising around looking for them, it's the only way to find spots to tag. This means you have to break up the action frequently by pausing to see where you go next. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it gets annoying fast. This could have easily been remedied by putting a little mini-map in the corner of the screen or a radar. This wasn't a new concept at the time either. Ocarina of Time had this. There's nothing even happening in this spot of the screen. So at this stage in the game, you'll just go over to all your rivals' neighborhoods and spray over their graffiti. About this time, you may notice that the camera can be frustrating, which is standard fare for games of the time, but I'm still going to bitch about it. Part of this is the limitation of the controller. The Dreamcast controller only has one control stick, so you don't have another good analog control to operate the camera. The game compensates for this by using the left trigger to reset the camera to being behind you. You'll rely on this a lot. Camera frustrations are compounded by some of these levels like Benton Show because you're in a lot of tight corridors. In short, Jet Set has a lot of places that feel cramped and the camera doesn't help. And as you progress through the game, you often encounter these battle scenarios in the garage, similar to how the game started, where you have to perform tricks to recruit a new character. These are fun, but on the other hand, they also have these races, and the races are very tedious. They're usually pretty long, and in most of them, they're hard to actually obtain an edge. You're often in a dead heat with the character you're racing against, and it all comes down to one moment. In some of the longer races, if you're behind, the character will actually wait for you, so what was the point of the race up to that point? And there's no good way to restart without going to the garage.
And that ends up taking like a whole minute.
Okay, so there's this routine they do in Benton Show in multiple races. Not only do you have to be quick enough to beat Yo-Yo or Tab in these races, which is hard enough, you can easily still lose by missing this hard-to-reach event that's in a blind corner from the camera, and it's particularly hard to mount. If you're even lucky enough to do that, you sure as hell better hope you hit the rail with momentum, or your rival will come and knock you off. And even if you can get that accomplished, you have to jump off this vent onto another one, and God help you if you come off at a bad angle, which happens a lot. Which brings me to one of my biggest frustrations about this game. When you jump off a rail, you get committed to a direction that sometimes feels completely random. You may have been holding the stick too far or not far enough in your intended direction. You can turn in midair too, but it's a little too late and not really by enough to correct for a bad jump direction. It doesn't always happen, but it happens enough that when it does, it feels like the controls are fighting you. It creates a kind of artificial difficulty. Similarly, it's at times very awkward to jump onto rails to begin with. They should be very forgiving, and even at most times they are, but there are just far too many times where you feel like you should have been close enough to just click onto a rail you wanted to grind on, but it just didn't take. Each one of the city areas in the game is further divided into smaller sections, and you'll be challenged to experience them individually first, but later in the game you'll deal with the whole cities. Getting around in the cities can be a pain. The map gives you few clues about where to go, and some of this just isn't explained to you and has to be figured out by trial and error. Like skating through this area of Shibuya-cho, or finding the sewer in Kogane-cho. This could have been remedied so easily. They would just have to put some markings on the map showing you that, hey, the sewer's here, or this area is a place you can access. Something about the timer in this game makes it feel like a huge nuisance. About halfway into the game, they seem to give up and just always set it to 999.99, which is apparently the max, and it just seems kind of arbitrary. And you can expect it to run out of that slightly over 15 minutes they give you a couple times in the game. Yeesh. Now, once you dominate a gang's turf, you're required to do a kind of battle with them. I hate these. I hated them when I first played the game. I hate them upon revisiting it the nth time. The term battle isn't even fair. You chase them around and spray your small-sized graffiti on them. It just feels like they couldn't come up with an adequate boss-type level for these. You need to spray them 10 times each within an allotted time. I always ended up with tons of time to spare on the clock, and you can often get all 10 in one go when you're close enough. Then there's Grind City. The levels and characters here were added for the international version, like that in the US. I like Bantam Street, feels like a Jet Set Radio level. I find Grind Square to be abysmal though, and it easily earns an award for the worst level. It's too tall, there's too much going on, the elevators are buggy, a lot of the graffiti is unusually hard to reach, the level can be very irritating. Like I'd said before, there's a varied amount of frustrating enemies in the game. There's cops, the cops tend to swarm and attack you. There's vehicles, everything from cop cars to tanks and helicopters, and you can often spray these vehicles to incapacitate them in some way or another. Then there's Rokaku. The Rokaku group enemies mix things up a bit, like enemies who electrocute rails, or snipers you have to chase away from areas so they don't shoot you while you're trying to spray. Car bombs, which I hate because I'm conditioned to just start spraying, then forget there's going to be a car bomb in the area. Things like that. Also, another nuisance is sometimes you can get hit by a car in Shibuya-cho, and you can't recover in time before it drags you right out of the level. Sure hope it doesn't happen 15 minutes in. On the music front, one of the things I like is that the game takes special care to feed you the music drip by drip. They'll only play a new song or two per level, so the songs don't become stale, and when you hear a new one, it's actually kind of exciting. Then there's the final boss, Goji Rokaku. The final boss is one of the better executed things in the game. This boss is so cool. The environment is psychedelic, and you're on this big spinning record. You have to get to these 4 difficult-to-reach spots and tag them while this giant golden rhino moves around between these spots. He attacks you with fire as you spray them. You need to evade him as you lay down the tags. But like most of the game, you can just brute force it, especially if you have enough stamina. Once the tags are sprayed, Goji's DJ booth opens up and you can grind up to him and solve your problem the way you always do, by spray painting it. The game really would have benefited from a couple of other bosses or enemies you could fight like this. There is extra side content in the game by way of Jet Graffiti, Jet Technique, and Jet Crush levels. In Jet Graffiti, you have a limited amount of time to spray graffiti. In Jet Technique, you're challenged to rack up as many points as possible. In Jet Crush, you'll race a rival. The reward for the content is unlocking additional characters, specifically each of the rival gangs, the Love Shockers, Poison Jam, and the Noise Tanks. And if you do everything, you'll unlock the GG's dog Potts, as seen in the garage, as a playable character. Sometimes I almost felt like this is a misdirect from hoping to unlock Professor K. Who the hell wanted to play as the GG's dog? The most cynical part of me says many of these decisions were made in order to drag out the game's runtime. Things like levels that are guaranteed to have to be replayed, or making you pause to find out where something is, or not marking on the map the ways between areas, or these tag battles. Though something like incompetence, or being new to 3D, or the hardware, or Rush are probably more likely. And that's the gameplay of JSR. I know that I'm not being entirely forgiving to this game, but there's two things I can never experience again. One of them is playing this game in the year 2000 when it was released, and the other is playing it for the first time. I think if I could play it through new eyes, I'd forgive a lot of the jankiness of the game. The cool music and the concept and the characters would carry me through to the end, and I'd wonder where it was all going. Then I'd beat it and be like, neat, and probably never play it again. I think it's also worth noting that I played the Dreamcast version, and there's an HD remaster out there on several platforms.
I hear it fixes some of the problems, especially the camera.
The reviews for this game are noticeably lower than the original release, lending some credence to the idea that this game hasn't aged well. But I love it, warts and all, though I don't think I'll ever play it again. So that wraps up my video on Jet Set Radio. Thanks for watching. I hope you... Oh fuck, there's 2 more games to play. JSRF, an acronym standing for Jet Set Radio Future, is the follow-up to Jet Set Radio on the Xbox in the year 2002. I'll wow you again with my mathematical prowess and point out that this is only 2 years after the previous release. God, what a difference 2 years makes. The game is noticeably better looking. Many more models are lit and rendered in that real-time cel-shaded style, and in a better resolution, so the game naturally looks cleaner and sharper, and by far. The hardware improvements of the Xbox compared to the Dreamcast are on full display here. The game opens and immediately hits you with the song Concept of Love and a stunning intro, which was all I needed to sell me on the game the first time I saw it, which I shamelessly stole as a technique for this video's opening. It's definitely in part a signal that this game is going to be everything the original was, and possibly more. Though if you had to make me choose, the original game soundtrack is better by some fraction. There's definitely more of the JSRF soundtrack though, probably due to disc size, including more Guitar Vader, songs by side projects of multiple Beastie Boys or Cibo Mato, who interestingly employs Miho Hattori, who was the first person to provide the voice of Noodle in the Gorillaz. Songs like Birthday Cake seem so in the spirit of the JSR soundtracks. When the game came out, they even teased the soundtrack with an audio demo for pre-orders. Can you think of any other time a game soundtrack was that anticipated that they could have used it as a selling point for the game itself? I can't. The game, as implied, is a futuristic reimagining of Jet Set Radio, and is on record as not technically being a sequel, which makes sense because what are the odds of people with these ridiculous names hooking up again? So of course the game has a more futuristic aesthetic. You've got a robot in your hideout and several robot enemies, DJ Professor K is old, I'm sure there's other things, future type things. So you'll start the game in the GG's garage. You'll start as Yo-Yo being recruited into the GG's. It's a pretty giant hideout for the 2 members and 1 robot. Instantly, you'll notice the controls of JSRF are significantly smoother. The turning radius in your characters is far less wide. What's more, all of the environments are wider and less boxed in. You really get to breathe. Something new you'll find out pretty quickly is you can grind vertically, which is as perplexing as it is cool. Spray painting graffiti has changed entirely. You no longer activate a tag spot and enter prompts. All graffiti now works like your small tag size from the original game where you spray it instantly with the press of the trigger. The only difference is with larger graffiti, is more of these tag spots must be activated. If you're going fast, it's hard to activate them in a row, so there's still some kind of challenge with these. Overall, it's less challenging, but more satisfying. Graffiti souls. I didn't mention these in the JSR section, but they unlock new graffiti. In that game, they're entirely optional, but in this game, there are times where you'll need them to progress the story. They're fun and easy enough to collect in passing, so it's not much of a gripe, but I can see it being a frustrating potential roadblock to progress. They appear on your map at least, so that's nice. It goes without saying, there's no longer a need to constantly bash the right trigger. In fact, you just go at one reasonable speed, except when you want to dash, which burns 10 of your spray cans. So the first area you'll access outside of the garage tutorial is Dogonzaka Hill. About this time you'll notice there's no level select, so to speak. The game is an open world concept where you seamlessly move between areas organically, skating between them with your garage and various areas acting as hubs.
This also means timers are gone, thank God.
I welcome this change. It is a little annoying to get around sometimes, there's no fast travel or anything like that, but I definitely prefer it to selecting levels. The game feels more authentic and realistic. Per the usual, your objective here is to cover Dogonzaka Hill in graffiti. One new cool addition is a trick button, which allows you to do tricks as you're grinding rails. It looks cool and seems to give you a slight speed boost. There's so many more groups of NPCs now to skate through, I guess because the hardware can handle it. They're fun and all at first, but they get annoying because they say like the same 5 things over and over. So after spraying the area with graffiti, you recruit Twink. Twink. Which works the same way it does in the previous game. By the way, in this game, DJ Professor K talks to you directly through the whole game, which makes no sense. Are we hallucinating? Is this a future thing? He'll tell you about graffiti stops, which are graffiti you spray that work as checkpoints, allowing you to save and do some of the things you'd do from the garage. There's at least one of these in every area, and I really appreciate the convenience. You'll continue to recruit Beat by racing him. Races are considerably more enjoyable, though the pendulum may have swung a little too far back in the other direction, because there's never a race I didn't beat handily. Between boosting and speed from grinding rails and doing tricks, they're very easy to win now. This is where you'll have your first encounter with the cops. Cops and Rokako are now one entity, which works for me. The enemies now rarely appear during graffiti sections. You'll be locked into a small area where you're forced to confront them. The enemies are varied, but the most common type just needs to be knocked over and spray painted. The map has been improved significantly. It's now a rotatable 3D model, though I still don't understand why there's no mini-map or radar. You'll still find yourself pausing a lot. The Shibuya terminal says everything that needs to be said about the differences in levels between this game and its predecessor. The level's gigantic, you could easily get lost in it your first time through. There are things to grind everywhere, and the level still looks really cool. It's such a major upgrade. I'm realizing here that the color palette of JSRF is more muted. It's less vibrant. I don't know if that has to do with the effing future, but I don't mind, the game is still beautiful. In the next area, Chuo Street, you'll have your first encounter with a vehicle enemy, tanks. Guess how you beat them? Also, you'll have an encounter with Hayashi, our new favorite unhinged cop. So you just go around spraying graffiti like you do. There's this area where Kakudai Heights. All these new areas have so much personality. It's a maze-like tiered structure which hides a lot of graffiti. The area is like half tract house and half junkyard. Here's where I found my first collectible tape. They unlock a list of challenges which unlock graffiti souls, which sometimes are an additional challenge to find or reach in and of themselves. After you spray over Poison Jam's graffiti, they run off to the sewers. One of the problems I have with this game is sometimes it's really vague about where to go. I think I know what it wants me to do, but then I go do it and it turns out I'm wrong. It would really benefit from some kind of current objective display in your menu or something. I found out where to go too often by trial and error. Like here I thought I was supposed to go to the sewer, but apparently I was supposed to go battle Rapid 99 in their home turf on 99th Street. I mean, they often do tell you where to go, but if you skip it or weren't paying attention, well, oh well. 99th Street is pretty cool. Feels like Rokakudai Heights reimagines the Kogane-cho area, and 99th Street reimagines the Benton-cho area from the original. Rokakudai has that sprawl and is connected to a sewer. 99th Street feels like a neon city full of nightlife with roofs and corridors to explore. It's got this cool dragon in the middle too, which is used as an entrance and exit to the area, as well as an elevator of sorts. In 99th Street, you'll encounter these spotlights. At this point, I'm starting to love the new enemies. For these spotlights, you just want to grind up them and spray them. Sure, it's simple, but it mixes up the action from just encountering cops over and over again. When you're ready to battle these not the love shockers, you won't do so by tagging them, you'll race them to collect flags. Probably a good time to mention that JSRF has multiplayer, and this is one of its mini-games. There's a few things that are probably more fun in multiplayer like this. I wouldn't know. I have no friends. I think these suck a little. I got lucky on my first go, but there's a good chance you won't get to the flag before the other team does, and they'll be racing to the next one while you're sitting around figuring out where it is. You also get handicapped whenever you get at the flag early, because when the next flag appears, there's a good chance you'll be further away from it. You almost have to remember where these flags are and do the challenge twice. It's okay, I guess. Beats chasing them around all over the fucking place and giving them lung cancer with spray paint. After this, you head to the sewer. Oh my god, the fucking sewer. Up until this point, I was starting to let my guard down and think there would be no real tedious, anger-inducing bullshit to piss me off, but I guess I relaxed a little too soon. When you enter the sewer, you'll get stuck in this pit, as a pretense to teach you how to do hand plants, which is a necessary skill to gain the momentum to work your way through this annoying bitch of an area. As soon as I looked at the map for the sewer, I was pissed. You have to tag a bunch of switches to open a door. The switches are, well, fucking everywhere. To make it worse, the sewer has multiple floors. And of course, it's one of those kinds of areas where you can easily make a mistake and fall from the top to the bottom. And it takes forever to work your way back up to a level you fell from. And you'll likely need to do it multiple times. Wait, why the fuck does Professor K laugh at you every time you fall into the drink? What an asshole. I thought this guy was on my side. I don't know what he's a professor of, but it certainly isn't medicine. I'm actually starting to think this guy doesn't have a degree. To this game's defense, they do try to remedy this issue with the multiple floors by having a graffiti stop on each level of the area. That way, if you fall, you could just reset your console, go through the start menu, load your game, and go back to the save on a more convenient floor. They had an elevator in the last game. What happened? This is really only a convenience if you don't miss one of the switches and have to backtrack to a different level, which, surprise, surprise, I did. The map isn't a great help in isolating the spots. At first, there's too many of them, and the indicators are so big they obscure each other. For me, it felt like I couldn't really isolate them until there were only a few left. I could almost forgive this sewer if it weren't for this narrow maze to get one of the switches. You're suspended above water, and anytime you fall in, you'll be reset back to the beginning of the challenge. And the controls are completely in opposition with this platform style of gameplay. The path is so narrow that it's easy to turn a little wide and skate completely into the water. The camera also works against you in this area. It's constantly adjusting and making it hard to get your bearings. Also, whenever you stop and face the other direction in this game, you do like a little stopping maneuver, and that could easily send you off of the edge. Another small gripe about this area is that the last switch looks like it's on the ground level, which made me think I missed it, but you actually have to jump through a hole in the top to reach it. So if you jump down to check, you're going to have to climb up all 3 floors again. Then you'll face off against Poison Jam, and yay, tag battling is back. I thought this was gone for good, and they actually managed to be worse in this game. They're intentionally set in much larger areas, which make them more annoying. Also, possibly because of that, the AI is much worse. I think in every tag battle I had, one or more of the rival gang members would get stuck on some part of the area, allowing me to just come up behind them and spray away all their health. Then they kidnap Yo-Yo. Oh no, not Yo-Yo! I don't care. The noise tanks make a reappearance, now they're actually robots. Also an appearance by new rival gang Mummy Dearest. The skyscraper district where the immortals hang out is kind of a pain. This happened to me when I originally played the game too. I got completely lost trying to find out where the hell all of the graffiti is. I knew most of it probably had something to do with the skyline since the place was called the Skyscraper District, but it wasn't until I checked the map and saw this staircase setup of buildings that I realized how to get to them. This took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out the first time I played it. This time around, I figured it out a little faster. Maybe this goes without saying, but it being a high altitude area, expect to fall a lot. The Immortals graffiti is also all over a new area, Hikage Street. I want to like this area, but it's built to be a total nuisance. Problem is there's these 3 areas that are nearly identical to each other. They're linked together by a maze-like set of alleys. And each of these 3 areas is what amounts to a large spiral staircase. These take forever to grind up, and if you fall off, you'll have to grind up them all over again. One of these even has a boss, which constantly knocks you down. To put it in perspective, each one of these has 6 floors, 7, 6, it's too many. This boss is pretty cool though, even though it's an aggravating experience. It's like a giant spider and you grind on its legs and spray paint its weak points or whatever. You'll need to cover up the Immortals graffiti in Rokakudai Heights and another new area, Kibugawaga Hill. The Kibugawaga Hill area is real cool even though it just seems like a vast expansion on Rokakudai Heights. It's probably the largest area in the game and it isn't without its frustrations. The area is just so big, and it's built in a kind of one-way circuit. Finding some of the hidden souls and hard-to-reach tags in this area is quite difficult. Haha, look at me blow up this helicopter. Once you sprayed over enough of their graffiti, you'll awaken the Immortals. More taggers tag, I guess that's what they call it. I've been calling it tag battling. Then you gotta do it again in this Highway Zero area. Okay, so now Yo-Yo is a double agent, and you get captured by the noise tanks. I want to say this is out of character for Yo-Yo, but there are no characters in Jet Set Radio. They're just really cool cardboard cutouts running around spraying each other with paint. You've now been captured and hauled off to the future site of the Rokaku Stadium, currently in construction. I just want to marvel really quick at how many areas JSRF has. Many of them you only see once or twice in the whole game, and yet they all have their own personality and are well designed. Here they'll teach you Blitzball or whatever. I literally put no effort into learning or trying to play this game. I thought it was dumb and I didn't want to do it. It's another one of those things that probably makes more sense in multiplayer. I just treated it like a single player race and I never lost or came close to losing even once. I might have enjoyed the game if they have tuned the AI and difficulty here to force you to play it and make it interesting. Instead, I did 3 matches of the bullshit against different gangs and never felt challenged once. It just felt like a diversion from the fun. The whole time I just felt like a ball hog. Kind of like your mom. Hayashi shows up and ruins the fun. You have another boss battle with the spider with drill arms, and then back to the garage. Now, about this time, I feel like JSRF is running out of steam. You have to battle the noise tanks, of which there's apparently like 1,000. You have to find as many of them as you can and run into them, blowing them up. It may sound fun, but it doesn't play fun. Which makes sense if you consider what you're being challenged to do is just touch so many various points on the map until the game tells you you're done. You have to blow up like 90% of these guys, and some of them just blow up and hurt you for no reason. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Then you go to Dinosaur Park to confront the noise tanks. Cube, who is like some kind of underworld kingpin in this game, shows up to tell you that Yo-Yo was actually a good guy, and the Yo-Yo who trapped you was an imposter, like I care. This is a pretty cool area. It's got a bunch of grindable roller coaster rails. You do this tag battle, or tag, or whatever the hell it's called. And look at this fucking idiot right here. Just look at him. Now this character Clutch shows up and steals all of your graffiti souls. It took me way too long here to figure out what you're supposed to do is confront him. It's not for lack of trying, but Clutch moves around from area to area with the professor telling you where he is. So this is kind of an endgame for JSRF, and from here any graffiti spots and enemies become super difficult. I would try to tag graffiti in the area thinking I'd be required to do that, if not now, eventually, but really all you want to do is focus on finding Clutch. At this point I don't think there's a clear order in which to do things, and some of the things you can do span across the last 2 chapters, and I don't know what's optional and what's required. There's some additional gangs to challenge, but the long and short of it is, you want to get back into this sewer and find this new area, the fortified residential zone. Just an aside, I found getting here very frustrating. I spent hours trying to find out where to go and ultimately had to consult a guide. I swear to God, I had deja vu from doing this when I first played the game. In the fortified residential zone, Yo-Yo is strapped to a bomb and you need to tag some switches in order to save him. I like this area, it's fun to explore and get lost in, though there are some awkward maze-like parts. Especially this vertical maze where platforms fall off when you stand on them and you have to trial and error which ones won't and then find the right level to get to the exit on the other side. What? Also, you're on a timer here. The timer seems pointless because it's more than enough time, but I guess it beats spending 20 minutes doing it all over again, so I guess it's more theatric than anything. You naturally save Yo-Yo and spray paint some poor helicopter pilots to death. I mean it, this shit isn't funny, they have families. The last task of the game is to find and kill, or fight, or whatever, the remaining golden rhinos. Also, Zero Beat is now here, spraying up fucking QR codes all over the city. This game is finally getting futuristic. They needed an Antichrist for this game. You know, a real Metal Sonic type guy, and the closest thing we have to a protagonist is Beat. So he's like the anti-Beat. This last task is kind of anticlimactic. After spray painting harmful chemicals in the face of bitter gang rivals and grinding on a futuristic spider mech, close up this game by like running into some cops. Yeah, okay, whatever. Then again, this fight is kind of cool with this go-go gadget arm motherfucker. Next, you'll head over to the side of the Tokyo line. The Golden Rhinos have completely kidnapped Professor K, the source of all your powers. It's a pretty neat boss fight where you have to jump between rails while trying to get close enough to spray it on these 4 key points. It overstays its welcome just a little bit. After this, you go to Shibuya Terminal, where Goji Rokaku has some kind of Zohar tentacle tower or some shit, I don't know. You fuck up Zero Beat's shit and then Goji sends you to the Shadow Realm. This is a pretty neat fight too. Certainly a highlight of the game. You're in this really cool psychedelic area and you need to go up and down collecting spray cans, knock Goji over and spray him. Okay, I know these boss battle strategies are getting repetitive, but this is surely one of the best ones. And that's it. A mighty cheer went up for the heroes from Tokyo. They had banished the awful mob boss forever, because he was haunted. Now, there's some endgame stuff, more characters to recruit, a lot of really awkward graffiti spots, and tape challenges to complete. What is this, Tony Hawk? I was even tempted to do some of this stuff, but for the sake of time alone, I wanted to get the core JSRF experience, so we could distill it and compare it to everything else in the series, move on to Bomb Rush as fast as possible. Boy, how that worked out. So, what can I say about JSRF? It plays almost like an apology for the original game. I think it's a real testament to the development team that they improved almost the whole formula, secret sauce, and made a bigger, better, badder game on new, almost experimental hardware in the course of 2 years. It gives me the impression that this team never really stopped working on Jet Set Radio and couldn't help but continue it. Or that the original was a concept and that game was just unfinished or rough around the edges.
Almost all of the tedium has been replaced by refreshing and interesting concepts. This game is almost like a bridge between old and new schools of game design. It certainly still has its faults. I'm not in love with most gang battles. I really hated the sewer. The game has too many optional things to do and it isn't always good about telling you what your main objective really is. It could use some kind of fast travel or shortcuts too. But the way the game just feels to control makes it addicting to play. JSRF feels so smooth. And unfortunately, it's just of consequence that this game could never be as revolutionary as the original. Lightning of this kind just doesn't strike twice. So while the game is better than its predecessor in most conceivable ways, it doesn't have the same legacy or positive reviews. But it is a great game, and I can easily recommend you play it at least once. Just dust off your original Xbox and, oh, I guess you're never going to play it.
Yeah, who got them moves, got them vibes, we got the strategy, do it all night, do it all day, no wasting time, we got the crew, get ready for the ride. Who got them moves, got them vibes, we got the strategy, do it all night, do it all day, no wasting time, we got the crew, get ready for the ride.
So, Bomb Rush. We're finally here. I know this video is, well, too long, but something happened to me when I played this game. First off, I loved it. Really loved it. I wanted to sing its praises and immediately had thoughts I wanted to get out onto digital paper or make a video. But the problem is Bomb Rush doesn't occur in a vacuum. It's so heavily inspired by the Jet Set series that there's almost no way of talking about it without comparing it to those games. As much as Bomb Rush is something great that stands on its own, without Jet Set, there'd be no Bomb Rush. And I ran some numbers, and it's something like 20 years since I played one of those games. And I wouldn't be honest with you, wouldn't be honest with myself making the comparisons unless I went back and really analyzed those games. I wouldn't have been able to talk about Bomb Rush vis-a-vis Jet Set Radio because all I had was vague and hazy, rose-tinted memories. And I'm glad I played through them again to disabuse myself of the notion that they were somehow perfect or untouchable, but also to gain a greater insight and love for the care and production that went into them. I'm not sure if I'm the right guy to be talking about these games. They should have sent a poet. But I had thoughts, that's all, and I wanted to share them. I played Bomb Rush, then the JSR games, then Bomb Rush again, and only came away with more respect for Bomb Rush. It was a beast before I went back, and it was a beast after. Also, just a note here, I wasn't too worried about spoiling the story to the JSR games because, what story? But also because, let me check my notes, 2 decades old, so fuck you. But spoiler warning for Bomb Rush, because it does have a story and it's a newer game that you actually might play. So with that, let's talk about my current favorite Jet Set Radio 3. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. Okay, so this is a petty complaint, as much of them have been, but this game doesn't seem to have some demo or opening. The most modest and least flashy thing about this game is the start menu. It just doesn't do the game justice. Could you imagine if the JSR games were just like a black screen and in Times New Roman they were like, please press start? But whatever, okay. So you'll very quickly notice how clean and sharp the game looks. It might not come across on my 720p recording, but the game looks great. Though, with all of the textures and lighting looking so clean, it's kind of weird all of the jaggy, unalias looking pixels around many of the facial features of the characters in some of these cutscenes. I even checked and made sure I had all the settings way up on my PC. I'm not really sure if this is on my end or it's just a thing about the game. I was taken aback, in a good way, when I first started this game because there were cutscenes and I was playing through a narrative. It starts in a police station with our main character, Foe, getting released from a jail cell by DJ Professor K's illegitimate son, Trice. Don't pretend he didn't have any. People heard the rumors. This kicks off the game's tutorial. You'll get thrown right into the gameplay, which fuck, more games need to do. First new thing you'll see here is you'll be on foot. I have mixed feelings about this. On one hand, like everything in this game, controlling on foot feels really solid and frankly almost as fun as skating or biking. You can do flips and run on walls and shit like a ninja. One problem is though that if you land on something that isn't skatable, namely stairs, you'll instantly revert back to walking. You'll want to be skating like 98% of the time, so you'll want to switch back. And the animation is a little long, so sometimes I'd hammer the button and switch around multiple times. My suspicion is that this was implemented in order to have areas like stairs to limit your ability to keep your combo going. Otherwise that system might be too easy, but I get ahead of myself. Moving around on foot is slower, but allows you to move with a little more precision. But there isn't much platforming, so it's probably not used to its full capacity. It is required to do this slide mechanic where you slide under doors and holes and such, which is all I can really say about it. One of the next things I noticed was I was able to rotate the camera around with the right stick in a kind of hallelujah moment. This feels so good, especially after playing the other games. JSRF uses the right stick to do a first-person look, which occasionally comes in handy, and the camera wasn't terrible in that game, but this ability feels like it adds a missing piece to the gameplay. You can always jerk the camera around and see where you're headed or what's behind you. I spent the whole game using this feature, so it has nothing if it doesn't have utility. It's standard in a lot of games now, but thank God it's there. Next, Trice will give you a boost pack. The boost gives you two abilities. One is a kind of double jump, the air dash, but it's more like a horizontal boost forward. It feels really good. It allows you to save combos and make it to areas just out of reach. Secondly is a boost which can be powered up by doing tricks or finding these grenades just laying around all over the place. The boost allows you to move quickly from one place to another, but it also works to help you take down enemies and can even work in tandem with your double jump to access far off areas. Right away I want to say that many of the mechanics in Bomb Rush were made with mobility in mind. It's just so easy and fun to get around. Then Trice will have you spray your first graffiti right in the police station. Ballsy. I really love the way the graffiti is handled in Bomb Rush. It's just so brilliant. See, in the original Jet Set Radio, as much as I wasn't ecstatic about following arrow prompts to spray graffiti, it felt kind of good. It felt like you were part of the action actually working on this art piece. In JSRF you just shh, and boom, it's sprayed down. And while it is still fun, I couldn't help but feel there was something lacking about that. I feel like Bomb Rush nails a compromise. You get these very quick prompts to range up points on your screen. You do a fucking trauma center healing touch or whatever, and boom, you lay down your graffiti. The animation that plays when you do this is short and sweet. It feels good. Every time. And here's where it gets interesting. Each combination puts down a different piece of art. This allows you to now collect as much graffiti as you want and never ever have to worry about changing it in or out. All of it's accessible at any time. If you have favorites, just memorize the pattern. I think this is so ingenious. It's the kind of thing that I think if I was developing a game, I never would have come up with. Also, another notable thing is you don't need any kind of collectible to spray graffiti anymore. It took 3 games for someone to figure out that was pointless. Next, you'll finally get some skates and perform your first grind. Grinding is largely the same, except now, in addition to grinding vertically, you can grind upside down. Also, they've expanded upon the trick button that we saw in JSRF. Now there are 3 trick buttons. What is this, Tony Hawk? A new cool thing is this feature where you get a trick multiplier for leaning into tight bends and 90-degree angle turns. You also get a major speed boost for it. Alright, time to fight some cops. Refield flies in while you're in the middle of a 0628, spraying graffiti with a lock-picking accomplice while escaping municipal jail. This is pretty fun. It's fun to dash around into the cops and knock them down and to crash and refield in midair. This will set a precedent for the rest of the game. Boss and mini-boss type fights are all like this. It carries on where JSRF left off. Also a fun thing is that the same buttons that do tricks also do attacks in these fights. Ewan tries to escape the police station just in time for DJ Cyber to show up and decapitate you with a record. Fucking metal. This game has a storyline. One that feels like part of the game as opposed to being a pretense to have the gameplay happen around it. It isn't Tolstoy, but I liked it and I'm glad it was there. To sum it up, so far you escape from the police station and join the gang, then instantly lose your fucking head, so that's how your day is going. And so, the Bomb Rush gang does whatever anyone in this horrific future would do and throw a cyber head onto your body to keep it alive. QoS booting. And starting the game now as Foe with a cyber head. Red. Okay, at first I didn't love this. I was getting attached to Foe, and now I'm some robot with Foe's body, but we'll talk about that later. You'll now find yourself at the hideout of the GGs, I mean Bomb Rush, and you'll meet your other teammate, Gummy, Rithy, Mew-looking ass Bell. One of the main story threads of this game is that Trice wants Bomb Rush to go all city, meaning they're the top riders who dominate all 5 boroughs in New Amsterdam. You do some like trick battle tutorials. Mostly I think they want to show you wall riding, vertical grinding, and doing the tricks with the 3 buttons. Also, now you're on a skateboard. This blew my mind. In the game you can choose between a BMX bike, a skateboard, or inline skates. Also, the motion capture for this game is sick. It really shows in the dancing and in the tricks. Bill gives you a cell phone. The cell phone is pretty cool. It operates as a menu you can use without having to pause. If you put on a song you like, you'll have to collect it first. You'll see a mini-map of a map in real time like a radar, another hallelujah moment. Look at your graffiti, check text messages from friends and rivals. So now Trice will want to teach you about rep, but I'm too busy playing Micro Boy. Are these Dreamcast bombs? Rep is just a numerical representation of how many spots you've tagged in the area. It's mostly used to keep you out of areas until you've sprayed enough places. It's like Banjo-Kazooie Jiggies, but with crime. In a quest to go find your head, you mix it up with the Franks, who are like baller zombies sewn together from pieces of dead guys. There's these challenges where you high-five these grinning idiots to unlock a little area and get a reward. It's usually extra outfits, graffiti, or songs, or the occasional elevator between parts of big areas. You have to maintain a combo as you touch each one of them. I really like these. They're optional time wasters, but they're pretty challenging and were irresistible for me. This area is a bit of an extended tutorial as they teach you some additional concepts here. Rail multipliers, wall riding, doing a slide/wheelie/manual. What is this, Tony? This makes for a great addition to the game. Like the air dash, this gives you extra leeway to chain combos together. It only lasts for so long, and doing tricks wears it down faster, and stairs end it completely. I really love this change. You would think it allows you to do tricks and combos infinitely, but this really isn't the case. It'll still take some getting used to the game and its areas before you really pull that off, though it is possible, eventually, and it still takes skill. After you finish these challenges, cops will attack you and you'll get your first exposure to heat. So you now have a heat meter, all of Grand Theft Auto, and after too much spraying or beating cops' asses, your heat level will rise, and you'll have more difficult cops and drones chasing you around the city. I like that to get to these higher tag areas, you need to attack these turrets and use them like a step stool to get there. You can clear this heat meter by going into a porta potty, and changing clothes, which are collectible throughout the game. Again, there's a hybrid approach here to JSR and JSRF. You are attacked by cops in your general delinquency, but you also have these walled-off fights and boss fights with them. They're made in such a way that they're pretty easy to avoid, and they definitely never slow down the gameplay. You'll go see the Flesh Prince. I love that pun. Who gave you your cyber head, and try to track down DJ Cyber, who's the last person to see your head. You'll have another battle with Rightfield. It'll be your first exposure to one of these helicopter drone things. They work similar to the turrets, where you just have to smash into them with an air dash and expose an area to spray paint. I like how Rightfield grabs the gun from the broken helicopter and starts shooting chains at you with it and shit. Very neat. It's a pretty straightforward fight, but it feels so much more rewarding than any of the ones I had in JSRF. You'll battle the Franks to get information on DJ Cyber because it's the code of the streets or whatever. Battling gangs is so good in BRC, I think they nailed it. They lean into the trick system in this game, more so than any game before it, and it rocks. You just have to score more points than the opposing team while the old heads judge you. I like these guys. Wearing fucking Adidas sweatsuits and blasting Run DMC or whatever. This guy fucking combo? The trick to these is to just earn up as big of a multiplier as you can. Boosting through corners and wall riding increases your multiplier. You should be doing tricks, manuals, or wheelies, or slides, or whatever throughout to rack up the numbers. However, each trick area will only increase your multiplier once, so you can't use the same areas over and over again. They get a little more challenging each time, but the second playthrough will prove them all easy once you know the areas. DJ Cyber shows up with his crew Futurism, because the Franks don't want to respect the code of the streets or whatever. Can we just stop and mention that this guy has a fucking Tachikoma from Ghost in the Shell? Like, just fucking yes. DJ Cyber says he's going to do some dream interpretation and throws your ass in it. I guess they do dream of electric sheep. These dream sequences are just dope. They're reminiscent of the last boss in JSRF, Rokaku, but they're even longer and cooler looking. They're psychedelic and dreamlike, duh, and contain little mementos of the area you just played. There's several of these and I loved each one. DJ Cyber pretty much doesn't do jack. And you decide the only way to get your head is to go all city, because then he'll have to listen to you because of the code of the streets or whatever. So when you beat the Franks, or any gang, you'll learn a dance, in this case, popping. So in JSRF, dancing is just a background element of the game. In Bomb Rush, the dancing can be performed at any time, just for the hell of it. But it does have a use. When activated on these checkered squares, it calls the rest of your team for a cipher, and you can change characters. There's one of these in every area. Co-founder of Team Reptile and director of this game, Dion Coaster, is a talented dancer, and actually motion captures some of the dancing. He's also a graffiti artist. This game wears its inspirations on its sleeves, and the more you look into Dion Coaster, the more you'll realize what a passion project this game is. There's an interview with this guy from PC Gamer out there that will give you the full extent of it, and I recommend it if you love this game. Storyline-wise, you'll learn about the Big Three, to which your body was once a part. Frenemies and rivals were the best riders around the city. Foe, some jerk called Felix, and then DJ Cyber. You'll see some discussion about Foe from the cops, how his dad's an officer, how he holds a resentment for vandals and understands the minds of them, and something about a Project Algo. I like how the chief has those Bato eyes. Yeah, I like Ghost in the Shell, okay. Which brings us to the close of BRC's first chapter. You'll continue your all-city aspirations by going after the next gang, Eclipse. They're like fortune tellers or something. First, you'll take them on in Millennium Square. It's a communal area in story and acts like the hub between all of the major areas in the game. It's a large downtown type area with a large empty plaza in the middle. It's very blue. All of the areas in Bombers have a distinct color palette and they're all a treat to look at. You'll spray over Eclipse's work until they notice you. They don't talk to men or robots with men's bodies, so you'll be forced here to start a cipher and switch your character to Bell so they even acknowledge you. To chase them to their home turf, Bring Terminal. Bring Terminal seems to take heavy inspiration from Shibuya Terminal, particularly in JSRF, but again goes even bigger with it and has its own distinct personality. You'll meet Solace, who's some freaky little masochist perv who knows Eclipse and will try to find them for you. I don't know to what point, because all he does is immediately get strung up on a fence. I love that whenever you interact with Solace, Trice is completely disgusted with him. You'll continue to spray over Eclipse's graffiti and have trick battles with them. Something I forgot to mention with the Franks is that after every battle with an individual gang member, they leave you a piece of graffiti to collect. It's probably how you'll get most of them. Eventually the cops will show up and you'll have another boss fight. With snipers. The concept is pretty easy, but the first time it took me a while to figure out what I was supposed to do. In the first phase, you just attack this one sniper with a cyber head who's shooting at you. You have a cutscene where the sniper asks Red what he wants, and he says what he wants is his head, and then the sniper laughs at him because he's like, so you basically want to cut off your cyber head and kill yourself? And he's got a point. In every sequential phase of the fight, you want to find that same sniper amongst several other regular human snipers, and he, of course, is in difficult to reach places. Next, you'll go to track down Eclipse to battle with them. This whole area is so cool. In addition to the bus terminal, you also have this plaza with all these planets to grind on. I also loved grinding up this really tall building to go find Eclipse. So you'll have a battle with Eclipse and win. Then you'll have another one of your trademark dream sequences. I can't stress enough that I never get sick of these. Each one is awesome and they're highlights of the game and mix up the gameplay. These are platforming done right. These are the precision platforming parts of the game, and they fit the gameplay rather than working against it like in so many places in Jet Set Radio and or Future. We get a glimpse of Project Algo and move on to the next chapter. In this chapter you'll take on the .exe crew. They're like a bunch of robot b-boys who hang out in the mall. I like their monitor heads that all display billiard balls. One is even a cue ball. You'll find the entrance to the mall blocked by a bunch of speakers, which is something the old heads do to keep you out of areas. They'll open these areas up once you have enough rep. Maybe it's just to teach you this is a thing. I don't know, it seems like a bit of a time waster. You'll have to run around Millennium Square and get more rep. Solace is here, being a little weirdo. The Millennium Mall is made of these big circular rink-type areas with multiple levels, since it is a mall, with lots of corridors leading between them. This area is gigantic and it looks like it would taste like lime. I'm not sure if it's the biggest area in the game, but it sure feels like it is. You'll run right into DJ Cyber's main spin, Vinyl, and she offers to help you out, because she's turning against him, but no one really trusts her. So you just go around vandalizing the mall and freaking out the straights. When you get to the top of this area, Vinyl will tell you to open the next area and you need to spray a switch. Just want to point out this part is exceptional platforming. You have to jump on moving crates and grind on moving rails in a warehouse, and it feels really good to do. In this next area of the mall, you'll start challenging the .exe crew. As you gain rep, you'll unlock them one by one as battles. I like how this game does manage to mix up these challenges. This one requires no points or tricks, but just sliding and collecting these charges without missing one. Grinding some fish. After those are complete, you'll face another boss. This one is a giant mech. Similar to the turrets or the helicopter, first you'll grind up his arms, air dash into his shoulders, and spray these mechanisms that come out, which destroy his arms in the process. With no arms, he'll attack you with his barrel, which will get stuck in the ground. You'll grind up that, air dash, then spray him again. Next you'll track down .exe again and start a battle with them. There's so many areas to grind here, it's really easy to get a high multiplier. After they lose, one of the .exe crew gets assassinated by a sniper and you'll be sent into a dream sequence. These dream sequences reveal more and more to you about some kind of memory that seems just out of reach. The next chapter starts in a pretty extreme way, with Red getting shot point blank range by a sniper. At this point our protagonist is dead. You'll need a copy of him to take to Death Peak, and a time egg, and Gaspar at the end of time it will be revealed that there's a head of a stranger, as seen in the previous dream sequence, inside Red's cyber head. We'll need to see the Flesh Prince to figure this out. You'll have to chase down the Franks again in Millennium Square and bring Terminal. We'll tell you the Flesh Prince is in Matan. Matan? I'm going with Matan, a new area in Futurism's home. While in Millennium Square you can unlock a taxi who will enable fast travel for you. I love that they made this attempt, but ironically the game is so well laid out it isn't difficult to get from one area to another. I guess it is nice if you want to avoid going through Millennium Square though, but interestingly enough I never found myself using this crazy taxi too much. You'll battle another Frank in Matan who will lead you to the Flesh Prince. So apparently after getting shot point blank range by a sniper rifle, Red is fine? Just a light concussion? It's because cyberheads are made of unbelievium or something? At this point it's revealed that the Flesh Prince was given some rando's head and told to keep it alive. He used a cyberhead, but it needed a body or it would slowly die. Try showed up with a fresh body, Foe's body, and the Flesh Prince got two birds stoned at once and put that head on that body, and now we have Red. The mystery of whose head is in that cyberhead can only be solved by going all city, of course, so let's continue to do that. The next gang is Devil Theory, these fucking Oni samurai outfit wearing weeaboos. All of the gangs in this game are so unique and I love their style, likewise with Devil Theory. The gang roams around Pyramid Island, and to get there you catch a ferry. It's really just like an instant teleport, but it's a neat little device to mix up the appearance of just skating around the streets all day long. This place is like a big industrial wharf or rig of some kind with a yellow hue. Pyramid Island is probably the most confounding of all the areas. Graffiti spots are hard to find, and it's a bit difficult at first to find how to keep your combos going. The area is broken up into multiple levels, but the only way from the lower level to the upper level is an elevator that you can only reach by losing your combo, so if you fall while doing tricks, you'll be confined to this lower area. Can I talk about half-pipes really quick? I haven't mentioned these much because in JSR and JSRF they're such afterthoughts. They're not fun and they're total pains in the ass. In both games, you'll go to jump out of a half-pipe and get stuck or grind on top of it. In Bomb Rush, the combination of the camera, the fact that the top of the half-pipes is not grindable, and the air dash make it so half-pipes feel functional for the first time. And it doesn't hurt that you can keep your combos going with them. Also, in some areas, these are used to reach very high places since they have this vertical launching effect on you. Another small thing is that it's so obvious what you can and can't grind in Bomb Rush. Everything has this neon yellow or red hue as a signal that you can. I never found this to be a problem in the other games, but it's still a nice little quality of life thing. I really like this area in Pyramid Island where you grind all of these windmills. Yeah, that's all. You'll unlock each new area of Pyramid Island by battling Devil Theory, which goes on and on. Not that I'm complaining. They're total wildcards and will do things like unleash heat on you as you chase them to battle, violating the code of the streets or whatever. You ultimately battle Devil Theory and win, of course, getting one step closer to All City. As per the usual with each chapter, you'll have a boss battle. The boss battle here is with DJ Cyber and his Tachikoma as opposed to the cops. He's pretty mad about Vinyl's betrayal and threatens to probably kill her or something. He goes around in circles flinging records at you and you can hit them back at him. Once he's stunned by one of these, you can go up and just hit him in his tank. This gets more difficult as he moves into a phase where he leaves all kinds of mines lying around. I think this is the first boss fight I actually died in one, so the difficulty is ramping up a little. Isn't it lovely how you don't just grind and spray? Isn't it? You'll get to see DJ Cyber's face, which is a little underwhelming. His face will trigger another dream sequence. At this point, we'll see that the legendary rider inside of the Cyberhead was Felix, one of the big three. And all of this was a convoluted ruse to get Felix's memories back into the Cyberhead. Look, I know this is just some video game narrative, but did anyone think of, I don't know, telling him? You attacked me with tanks and bombs, dude. And you just pretended to be mad at Vinyl like you were gonna kill her or something? What purpose did that even serve? Felix understandably punches DJ Cyber right upon awakening. Yeah, I get that. Turns out DJ Cyber never even had Foe's head, because the police do, and it's being used for Project Algo. Foe is feeding misinformation to the police about the gangs. But we just had a battle with discs that could decapitate someone in mines on an offshore rig of some kind. Maybe the cops should be called. Everyone picks on Solace for a second. He deserves it. I guess now you have to go all city to get back the rest of Felix's memory because Felix knows Foe's weakness. And DJ Cyber isn't going to just help. You still have to beat Futurism, so what a dick. Matan is neat, if a little underwhelming for a final area, and we've been there before. It's a midnight blue nightlife downtown metropolis looking area, similar to Benton Show or 99th Street. There's some cool areas and golden cows around. The level's pretty much more of the same. Trick challenges, graffiti, and a battle with Futurism. You'll have your final dream sequence, which lays down the major twist of the game. Not only is Red Cyberhead Felix, Foe is the one who decapitated him. I guess what goes around comes around. Foe, wanting to take down his rival, and knowing Felix didn't use a boost pack, because the one wing he needs is a tattoo on his face, that's so gay, took advantage of the fact that he was holding a ladder for him, and pushed it. Felix falls through a sharp fan, removing his head. Solace saw the whole thing, the guy could have said something, and we find that Foe is using his role as Project Algo to try to go all city by killing all the competition. You fight Foe in a mech similar to the one you fought in Millennium Mall. Motherfucker decapitates you again. And Ryfield shows up with Felix's body, which the Flesh Prince reattaches in 5 minutes. It's also convenient. I just want to point out there's a real Ship of Theseus thing going on with your protagonist in the game. You start off as Foe and lose his head, then you're Felix in a Cyberhead with Foe's body, then you're Felix with Felix's body reattached. Admittedly, I love it. Foe runs off with Solace and you have to go save him, but come on, do we? You have to tag these spots to open up a secret passage in Matan, which leads you to where Foe and Solace are. This boss fight is pretty cool. Just grind around on some rails and attack spots. Yeah, we're relying on that again. These rails have some obstacles though, and it's a little difficult to forge a path to these 6 or 7 spots you have to hit, expose, and spray. It's a good challenge, but not too difficult. You'll win and hit Foe with his one weakness, that Daddy is a cop. More specifically, a corrupt cop who's been keeping him from any kind of prosecution. Wait, didn't this game start with Foe in jail? Felix headbutts Foe so hard it breaks him out of his Cyberhead and back into humanity. And that's a wrap on Rush Cyberfunk. One of the best games I've played in a long time. If you're so inclined, of course, there's extra after-game content. Finding all the graffiti spots you've missed, there's additional characters, challenges, character outfits, decks, skates, and bikes. But admittedly, I think the best content is within the core campaign, which makes sense. At the end of the game, you get an achievement called Now Go Outside. Dion Coaster said this was meant to be interpreted literally, that he hoped the game would inspire people to turn it off and go outside and do something fun, to touch grass as it were. But if I'm being honest, I think this is really at odds with developing a fun game, and that mission failed for me because I jumped right back into the game. Then again, I've been putting off all the side content until this video is finished, so maybe it did inspire me to do something. So, my thoughts on Rush Cyberfunk. If you've watched up to this point, 1, thank you, you're a saint. But also you probably already know what I think. It plays like it's made by someone who knows what is and isn't lovable about the Jet Set series. Seems to do everything right. It takes things that work, like the graffiti, the controls, the aesthetic, and improves upon them greatly. It takes other things that were rough around the edges or needed drastic improvement like gang battle, the trick system, platforming, the cops, and manages to somehow make all of those things better. And then it takes things that don't work at all and completely throws them out the window. No spray cans, no tagger's tag, no shitty platforming. Now, I haven't talked about the music up until this point, and honestly, it's because I have some mixed feelings. Keep in mind, the soundtrack to the Jet Set Radio series is probably my favorite from all video games. There's some big shoes to fill. Then again, there's some songs I love. Funny enough, Hideki Naganuma reprises his role as Funky Dealer of music in Bomb Rush and actually produces a few of the tracks, and they're all bangers. Also, the soundtrack grew on me. Like the Jet Set games, Bomb Rush feeds you the soundtrack in small bites. And when I originally played the game, I was pretty frustrated with the music Shibuya Terminal. It felt repetitive and I was getting sick of it. It's a small thing, but I feel like the soundtrack of the Jet Set games had a little more breadth. You had hip-hop and house and punk all living together, where Bomb Rush's soundtrack feels a little more homogenous. But I think there's nothing to be ashamed of. If JSR's soundtrack was a 5 and JSRF's was a 4.5, then BRC's is a 4. Something like that. It's much to my dismay and disappointment that there are rumors that Team Reptile has no plans to create a sequel or any additional DLC for this game outside of some characters they have. It's a hard pill for me to swallow. I just want more. But at the same time, the community around modifying this game already seems to be growing quite quickly, with all kinds of custom characters like 2D from the Gorillas or Takumi Fujiwara. That's not to mention characters from the original game, like Peter Griffin.
Oh, have you not heard? It was my understanding that everyone had heard. What? Heard what? Ryan
This may just be an evergreen game, kept alive by the community with mods, which is what I hope for most. All of the games I mentioned exhibit similar runtimes. They're about 10 hours long and a little longer with side content. That might make the price of Bomb Rush a little steep for some of you at $40. I want to say I got it on sale, but it was only a few days after its release, so that's probably not true. For me, it was worth every penny, and I'm usually a stickler on price, but I'm probably the most core audience. Then again, this game sold 100,000 copies on Steam alone within the first 10 days. That's not to mention all the console sales where it is everywhere, Switch, Xbox, and PlayStation. It's up to almost 300,000 now. To put that in perspective, JSRF only sold 80,000 copies in 6 months. Though, I don't know if that includes all the copies they gave away with Xboxes. It's also competitive with JSR's 1 million copies worldwide. You might see a game like this and say, big deal, it just ripped off Jet Set Radio Future. No, it is a big deal. First of all, it's not like they had the engine. This game was created from scratch in Unity, and there's no guarantee that anyone's going to get that right. How many Kickstarter projects screwed the pooch right out of the gate? How many people were disappointed with Mighty No. 9 when Mega Man should be the most simple experience to recapture? And Team Reptile didn't crowdfund this game. It's a straight indie darling without a million fans backing it up financially and being put in the game as characters nobody wants to see. If I was remaking Jet Set Radio and releasing it on a wide scale, I'd wake up at night in a cold sweat from nightmares of being excoriated on the Steam page. The most damning thing I can say about Bomb Rush is there's an element of been there, done that. If you had to put these games on a graph, the gameplay goes up to the right with each iteration, but the cultural impact and artistic shock goes down. And that's too bad, because I think BRC deserves to be the king. It's already become one of my favorite games and holds a warm place in my heart, next to and in some ways above the Jet Set Radio games. It's much like someone pulled the next Jet Set Radio game from another universe. And it's gonna have to do, because it's not like we're ever gonna get Jet Set Radio 3. Oh no, Sega's making Jet Set Radio 3. I can't help but wonder if Bomb Rush is a shot across the bow that caused that. Mostly because the game came out of nowhere and they've only released like 5 seconds of concept footage and the timing is sus. Well, if you got this far, thank you for watching this entirely too long video. There's so many other things I wanted to say. The rabbit holes of all 3 of these games run deep, and sadly, everything I've said is surface level. But if you're curious, even a little curious, go and play every one of them. I promise you, you won't be disappointed.